So in this next section, it's going to be all about how can I have a really high quality conversation that's going to allow me to work out, is this person compatible with me or not? So if you have been going on plenty of dates and you go on the date and you leave each one feeling a bit like, oh, I don't know if I really felt much spark or much connection there. If you just feel like you're not really resonating with anyone, or you don't feel much enthusiasm to go on dates, or perhaps you have all the enthusiasm to go on dates, but you find yourself getting stuck in that awful small talk and failing to make the impression and the impact that you deserve and that you know that you want to make, then this is the section for you. We're going to start to look at why small talk isn't really the most effective form of communication to have on your dates, then how you can develop a better mindset for conversation, and then we're going to learn some practical tools so you can get more comfortable with sharing information about yourself. So what do I mean by small talk? Small talk to me is the kind of conversations that we perhaps get asked all day, every day, that are not very exciting and that only take us to a very superficial level of conversation. It's the kind of conversation where, though we might end up chatting to someone for 20 or 30 minutes, we can walk away not ever really feeling like we genuinely know the other person. And if we don't feel like we know the other person, and likewise, we haven't really expressed any detailed information about ourselves, it can be very hard to recognize when there's that potential for a match. So small talk is going to be asking things like, so how was your trip here today? Or what do you do for work? How's your quarantine going? It's those sort of questions we get asked all day, every day, like, how are you? Now, the problem with small talk is that, as I said, it doesn't really allow us to get into the depth of conversation we need to build a genuine connection with someone. Now, small talk isn't always bad. When we first greet someone on a date, it can be quite natural to have a bit of chit-chat, and it can help one another to relax. However, if we allow the whole date to become small talk and we never say anything more meaningful, this is when we can both walk away from a date being unable to recognize if there's that compatibility there. That's because small talk is kind of bad for a date in three main ways. First of all, if we get stuck on small talk, it's very, very hard for you to demonstrate how unique and how interesting you are, particularly if you're the person that's always asking all the questions. You can actually sometimes neglect to share any information about yourself. And whilst, of course, by asking questions, it's good to show that you're interested in your date, I also really want you to communicate how you're interesting as a person. Everybody is interesting. And if you're not quite getting that across at the moment, remember, this isn't about you, it's about how you can learn to become a better communicator. The second main problem with small talk can be that, again, with the other person, they also give us very limited responses back. To imagine this, I kind of want you to think about when you use a chatbot on a website. You can kind of talk to a chatbot, but the responses you get back may be very short and very limited. We don't really know much more information. So when you ask a person, how are you, or how's your quarantine going, this person may have been asked that question time and time again over the past few months. Because of that, they don't really have to be very creative, they're not put on the spot, they don't have to be very original in how they answer. They're just going to kind of go back to the script of how they've answered that question the past 100 times. Because of that, they might not be as present in the interaction, and it can be harder for you to assess and gain a really good insight into who they actually are. So you can see how this adds up, right? With you not expressing much about how you're unique, with you not talking much about yourself, with you going automatically into question-answer interviewer mode, and then because the interviewee, your date, has heard those questions all before, they're also giving you very limited answers. And the net result of that is, even if you could actually have a really great spark or a really great connection, you're not able to recognize that. And because of that, great potential matches are lost. And of course, I don't want this to be you. I want you, when you have your dates, to find them enjoyable, to find them rewarding, and to find it easy to express yourself and to build that all-important spark. And I really believe the spark is something that you can create. It's not just down to luck. So this is what we want to work on today. So to start off with, before I go into some more I guess, technical details and tools about how you can become a better conversationalist, the first place to start is, I guess, getting into the right mindset around what a conversation actually is. I want you to remember that a conversation isn't an exchange of facts. It's not a fact-finding mission. That's why when we ask questions like, so how long have you been working there? Or how far away is that? We find that the conversation can start to dry up because we're not really asking questions here that show a sincere interest in the other person. Instead, a conversation should really just be a tool by which you get to know and understand the person that you're speaking to. Now, if you don't feel very confident about your conversation skills at the moment, it can be really, really tempting to just rush through that conversation to try and pre-prepare some questions and think, okay, how do I just get 45 minutes in so that I know that I've said enough? And instead, when you're in that mindset, you can actually get stuck inside your own head and fail to really listen to the information that the other person is telling you. If you think about it, with the combined total of your personal history and their personal history, if we wrote that all down, there'd probably be enough information in there to fill a library full of books. So I don't want you to worry about running out of conversation. It's all about understanding that it's not that there are good and bad topics of conversation. It's all about how you talk about things that can make them more or less interesting. So to start with, it's worth, before you go into your dates, to think about these few things in terms of what you're looking for and how you can use conversation more purposefully. The first question you might want to ask yourself when you're thinking about what to talk about on your dates is, what would make me feel more attracted to this person if we ended up talking about this? That's because I really want you to go into your dates focused on what you think will enable you and help you to connect with another person. You can also ask yourself, what do I love to talk about? Now, you may think, oh gosh, but I like to talk about football, or I like to talk about video games, and I'm not sure anybody's interested in that. However, when anybody talks about something that they're really passionate about, they come across better. They find it easier for the conversation to flow. So actually, by introducing topics that you're really happy and really comfortable talking with, you're going to find the conversation flows better. Finally, another great question to think about when you're trying to plan out how you can have a great conversation is, what values and what qualities am I looking for in a potential partner? It can be really too easy to go onto a date and all your focus can be about worrying how you can impress the other person, worrying about how you're going to figure out enough things to talk about. And really that puts all of your energy and focus in the wrong direction. Instead, remember, a date is an opportunity for both of you to work out whether there's a potential for the match or a connection there. And in order for you to do that, you really need to stay focused on what's important for you and what you're looking for in a partner. And I'm not talking about, I don't know, looking for someone that has curly hair. I'm talking about someone's personal values and qualities that you'd like someone to bring to a relationship. Do you want someone who's supportive, spontaneous, reliable? To begin with, and the relevance of this we will come back to later, if you do have a pen and paper or your smartphone to hand, I want you to now take this opportunity to write a little list about what you happen to be looking for in a partner. I'm asking you to write this because I really want your focus not to be on how do I perform better or how do I impress this other person. I want your focus to be on connection. And to do that, I want you to really think about what qualities you're looking for in a person, because later on in this session, I'm going to be showing you some tools about how you can use conversations more effectively to really listen out for particular qualities in people that you're meeting. To start off with, though, we're going to look at how you can become better at talking about yourself. Now, particularly if, like me, you are a British person, talking about yourself can feel really awkward and actually quite difficult. That's because often we've been told from a very young age that to show interest in another person and to be polite, asking questions is the way to go. So sometimes we can go on to our dates feeling like by asking questions we're doing the right thing. And of course, asking questions about your date is a nice thing to do, and showing interest in the other person is very important. However, the problem can happen when this becomes really disbalanced and you enter what I call interviewer mode. This is where you go onto a date, and rather than having an enjoyable dating experience that you're both participating in, it suddenly becomes a little bit more like you're a journalist and you're just asking a person lots of interview style questions. Now, what you'll find is when you use lots and lots of questions all at once when you're on a date, this is a great way for the conversation to dry up and evaporate. That's because when we ask multiple questions back to back, you'll find that often the answers your date can give you become narrower and narrower. So you'll find maybe you say, "So what do you do for a living?" And then you might say, "And how long have you been doing that? And what did you study to do that?" And then suddenly you'll feel like the person's answers go from being quite good quality answers to them just saying yes or no or 4 years. When a person gives you that level of answer, it's actually pretty difficult for you to suddenly magic up some amazing conversation. You don't really have a lot to work with. So remember, when you use lots of questions back to back, the conversation can kind of narrow and it can evaporate, making it harder for you to keep the conversation going. To make it easier for you to keep the conversation going, we actually want to encourage you to use more statements about yourself and get more comfortable with saying things about you. And the trick to this really is to get comfortable enough about saying statements about yourself whilst also doing so in a way which is encouraging your date to participate in the conversation, so that you're not just talking at a person, you're not just having a monologue, you're not talking over someone or doing any of those other social faux pas. More, you are opening up in a way that encourages the other person to respond. Because kind of another negative of using too many questions back to back is that the other person can feel a bit put on the spot, particularly if they don't know what your answer would be to the questions you've just asked them. For instance, if you ask them, "So what do you think of Brexit?" they may not give you their full answer there because they're kind of worried, like, "Oh, what if I say something here which is the wrong thing? What if I end up saying something that this other person disagrees with?" So when we don't share enough information about ourselves, not only does it mean the other person can give us very short and narrow answers which are hard to build on, but it also can mean that we have a problem. It also can mean that we have a problem where really we're also not building enough trust in the conversation to make the other person feel comfortable. So start to see making statements about yourself as a way that you build trust and make it easier for the other person to respond to you. To help you think about how you can get started doing this, I have a great conversational tool that I'm going to teach you now. This tool is called the Go First Principle. And much like it says on the tin, it's all about learning to share information about yourself first and ask questions second. So I want to take a really simple example of a question and then show you how you can turn that into a Go First principle. So let's take a simple question like, so what's your favorite color? So instead of asking that person that question, not that I'd recommend that as a date question, by the way, wouldn't be a brilliant one. I want you instead to learn to ask yourself that question inside your head and then give the other person your response. So instead of saying, "So what's your favorite color?" you would possibly say, "I don't know about you, but my favorite color is orange. I really like it because it stands out and is unusual." So I want you to notice there that when you're using the Go First principle, that kind of breaks down into two parts. The first part is all about signaling to your date that there's something in what you're about to say that you would like them to respond to. And we signal to a person that there's something in our speech or conversation that we want them to respond to by using the word you. When we say the word you, it's quite magical. It makes people's ears prick up and think, "Oh, there's something here that I need to respond to." So when you use a statement like, "I don't know about you," or "I'm not sure if you've had this experience," or "You'll probably totally disagree with me," when we start our sentence that way, the other person on our date knows, okay, this person has something here, something's coming up here that I'm going to respond to. The second part is all about feeling comfortable with sharing some information about yourself and being able to expand on it. So rather than just saying, "My favorite color is orange," we really want to say, "My favorite color is orange because," and extend that statement. Let me give you an example now of another much more common date question and how you can use the go first principle to make this more interesting. Okay, so another question that might come up for you is you might say, so have you got any post-lockdown travel plans? So first of all, remember, first step, instead of asking that question directly to the other person, we're going to flip this around and ask it to ourselves in our head. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use that you hook to suggest to the other person there's something here for them to respond to. So you could say, so I don't know if you've made any post-quarantine travel plans. Then the final step here is to share information about yourself and really expand on it by saying because. So rather than just saying, I've booked a holiday for next year, you can say, I don't know if you've made any post-lockdown travel plans, but I have to say I've got like itchy feet and I've already booked not 1, but 2 trips for next year. So immediately there, you can see that not only has the other person got a clear indicator, hey, there's something in here for me to respond to, but also you've given a much expanded opinion and a bigger statement about yourself, which is going to make it easier for the other person to respond back to you. So when you're using the go first principle, it's all about learning how you can talk about yourself more in the conversation. And I know at the beginning this may feel a bit awkward and you may be conscious of being too domineering or too boastful, but I just want to reassure you, by saying more statements and asking less questions, what you're actually doing is helping the other person to build trust with you, to get to know you better, to understand how unique and interesting you are, and then also to share their opinion in return with you. So I actually have 3 more pretty cool conversational tools that I'm going to be sharing with you in our next chapter. But before we get to that, I have a few more questions that I can see have already been sent in, so I'm going to answer them first. And I have to say, I love how this first question is phrased. So first question says, how do I play it cool to get to date 2 when I really like someone and want to tell them everything? Now, you can't see the question, but I can tell you now there's a question mark and several exclamation marks that end this. So when we're thinking about playing it cool, of course, I'm going to advise you, don't play it cool. I want you to be authentic and I want you to be your genuine self on dates, because if you're not your genuine and your authentic self, how are you going to find the people that you connect with most authentically and get on with you best? So actually being yourself is great. You don't have to worry about playing it cool. However, I do think there's a little mindset shift you can make here that's going to help you to, I would say, naturally be a bit more relaxed on your dates. So sometimes when we leave a first date and we think, oh my gosh, this person is amazing, we're not actually really connecting with that person because you've only really known them for a few hours, right? So they can't have made that much of a great impression on you. Instead, you're excited about the person who you think they are, and you can kind of end up putting them on a bit of a pedestal in your mind. If you find yourself to be one of these people that does wear your heart on your sleeve and you do find that you put your dates on a pedestal and get a bit carried away with yourself, a good thing to remember is actually that all of those qualities that make a really successful date, someone being consistent, someone being a great communicator, someone showing you respect, those qualities have to play out over a period of time. So someone can't be that great by date 1. So if you can keep that in mind and help your feet to stay on the ground, hopefully that will also help you to be naturally a little bit cooler and more reserved as you really take your time getting to know that other person. Okay, so the next question is kind of on a similar theme. It's all about how much we should share with another person, how open we should be. So this person asks, how to approach dating when you really want children and you don't want to scare guys away. So having children is obviously one of those big fundamental decisions in dating, which can be very divisive. And if you do want children, it's a value that's obviously going to be very important to you. And just like how I wouldn't advise you to play it cool, I also don't want to advise you to pretend that you don't want something that's really fundamental to your compatibility with another person. However, when we're thinking about the guys that you're going to meet, to state the obvious, some guys that you're going to meet, some are going to really want children, some are not going to want children, and some are going to be open to the idea of having children at some point if they meet the right person. Now, just like if you go on a date with someone and they seem to be very focused and they really want a committed relationship, sometimes something you want to be a bit careful of in terms of how you express that want to have children with a person is you don't want to inadvertently make a person feel like they are your tool in order to have children. Instead, having children, your mindset around that should be a byproduct of having met and had a really great connection with someone. So I would instead turn this around in your mind and start to think instead like, if I do have a great connection with someone and I do form an amazing relationship, then of course I would love to have children with that person. So remember to keep your focus on finding that quality connection and partnership first, and children being a consequence of that you would like. And I think if you go into the dating with that mindset, you're going to express your desire to have children with someone in a way that comes across really well. Okay, so our final tip and question is, do you have any tips for helping to break down the fear of vulnerability? So by being vulnerable, I think this person means feeling comfortable actually with sharing information and expressing their true feelings. Now, if you were listening to what I was talking about in the last section, hopefully you'll get the impression that actually by sharing information about yourself and by being open about your vulnerability, this is one of the best ways that we can start to appear more unique with people and build those true connections. So it's something you really want to do. So I want to encourage you to do that. However, you don't have to, on date one, go full disclosure and be 100% vulnerable with someone. Sometimes if we've just met someone, that might not feel very natural. So instead, I would give yourself permission to take time to build trust over your dates and slowly open up to a person. To begin with, it might be as simple as using something like the Go First principle to get more used to sharing information about yourself and actually being less of an interviewer as your first step towards showing more vulnerability. So just to recap what we were going over in the section that we've just had a look at there. To begin with, small talk is not the best form of conversation, and it's not going to do the best job of finding you the connections that you want on dates. Conversation is, of course, not just an exchange of facts. It's in fact much more about how you get to know somebody else. And I also want you to go into a date avoiding being the interviewer and remembering that as well as being interested in the other person, I also really want you to focus on being interesting and expressing yourself. So in our next section, we are going to be looking at a few tools for how you can really build and create better connections. We're going to be looking at how you can ask more worthwhile questions, what to do if that awkward pause comes into the conversation, and then also how you can be a much more effective listener.